Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Christensen. This is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and this is Scare-A-Thon 2023, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the 2020 film Host, the Zoom horror film, and I have an awesome panel of guests. Let's bring everybody in, and let's say hello to Josh Zagoren.
Hello, it's been so long.
Eric Fritzius.
Howdy.
Mackenzie Parker.
I'm ready to party like it's spring 2020.
Dan Kiggins, as we talk about Host from 2020, which was deemed, I was reading, the most 2020 movie ever. And I'm like, I could see that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
anyway,
perfect timing for that moment, for sure.
Did you all happen to watch this movie in 2020? I know I came to it late, but
I did.
Who all saw this in 2020?
I did.
It was like 2 weeks ago for me.
Yeah. Okay. So what was your thought, Josh, when you saw it for the first time?
First off, I loved it because it was perfectly done for what was happening at the time. I think the best way to watch this movie is on your laptop with your headphones in, which is what I did, and it was like my laptop was haunted. So I had a great time.
Mac?
Yeah, I watched it as they intended, right in the middle of quarantine. I had heard about it. I'm not a big fan of found footage or screen lifestyle movies, so I was really skeptical going in, but I'd heard it was really something, and yeah, I was really blown away. I watched it on a big OLED screen with my roommates that I had at the time, and it was amazing, and it blew me away. I'd never seen anything like it, and I think it successfully used like the tropes of screen life and a lot, and just so well.
Dan?
I am new to this one. This I just watched for the first time last week to fill this little square right here. So I've got a fresh opinion on it. I didn't have the COVID feel, but you could feel COVID oozing from it for sure.
And Eric, as a fellow newcomer?
Yeah, I just watched it from the comfy chair in my living room in broad daylight 2 weeks ago. It probably would have done with more atmosphere if I had waited for the dark, but then my wife would have to have been present, and she does not care for the horror movies, as you know.
Well, I also watched it recently. I did watch it later in the evening, so it was pretty dark. I was impressed with it, with what they did, and of course, it reminds me of Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity and films like that, not just because of the found footage aspect, but also the story behind the film actually being as interesting as the film itself. I mean, the fact that they shot this during quarantine and basically were just sending instructions and props and things over to the actors' houses and saying, okay, rig this up here, and we're going to have somebody over and do a stunt gag here, and we're going to have some makeup effects here. But everybody basically directing, doing their own production design on hand in their own apartments. I thought that was pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really. I was here in LA watching the big studio system, like a big ship in the night, trying to like maneuver, and it couldn't do anything, couldn't make anything happen because of quarantine rules. And here this movie came as just like a speedboat, It moved so efficiently and effectively to speak about the moment without being too preachy or about being too obvious. And yeah, fantastic take.
And nailing the vibe. Sorry. And it never seemed like they were trying to make a movie about what was happening. It was like, no, we're just making a horror film in a horrible situation, which I thought was really admirable, because there was never, like you were saying, it's not preachy. There was never like a moment where it was like, oh, I just miss going outside. Like they really have these like real moments of them joking. Like those two women see each other every now and through the window, like they're neighbors, but they can't come in. The little elbow bumps and stuff like that. I was like, just touches, just little like, here's where we are in the world.
Yeah.
Love that.
Well, and I think it was born of our director, Rob Savage. He had done a short film, and it was basically kind of like on a Zoom call, watch me go up into my attic, and then something scary happens.
It was a prank.
And that went viral.
Yeah. It was a prank. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a prank, and it went viral. And Rob Savage, being a writer-director, was kind of like, well, what if what could I do with that? Has anybody seen Rob's other film, Dash Cam?
I have so much I want to say about Dash Cam. And that is a different stream. But yes, I have seen Dash Cam.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just learned of Dash Cam today, and I was like, okay, what's his third film? Ring Doorbell?
It's DoorDash is his last one.
Well, Dash Cam I've not seen yet, but I know it's incredibly divisive. Like some people love it and some people really, really hate it. So I'm excited to check it out. Just because I've been hearing about it, I didn't realize it was the same director.
I think all the tropes that are great about Host that he uses, like his ability to switch, which I think Cloverfield does as well, where it like uses found footage, a medium, like it's not 100%, like this is a real leftover, like the Blair Witch was like, this was leftover footage that we found.
Right.
This, now the new found footage thing is like the lens in which we're telling this story. So there's impossible things and reasons why you're holding your computer in the middle of a ghost attack is hilarious. That's one of my favorite things in found footage movies, where they're just like, it's the scariest thing in the world.
I can only see through my camera.
Right, exactly. It's this bit where they go like this, and then they look like this, and look like this. That always makes me giggle.
I can't possibly look with my eyes. I have to be looking through my phone.
Because if you were being attacked by a ghost and you were filming it, the footage would just be chaos. But these just happen to be perfect shots. But that's what I think.
You gotta buy into it.
Yeah, well, but that's my point. Is that I think what J.J. Abrams did with Cloverfield was like, hey, let's just use the found footage thing as a style of film, and just you buy into it because you're like, oh, you're just doing this because that's the way you're telling the story. Okay, fine.
Nobody actually ever got all the footage and assembled it together, which used to be my beef with found footage. Was that, like, well, how did you get that footage and how did you get it into an editing room and et cetera, et cetera. But now, like, I think you're right. I think that kind of that first person is how it's labeled these days. It's just like, it's a first person POV that's how you're seeing these movies. But I like the fact that it does integrate different, but kind of coming back to this film, I mean, this is very much a straight ahead Zoom call, even though it's being, some of the Zoom stuff is being done on your phone. You're walking around with your phone. You're still being recorded. And I think, for me, it resonates even more now because in 2020, Zoom was still a very new thing to me. I didn't do a lot of video conferencing. So, 3 years later, here we are doing this very program in a Zoom format, like this feels very familiar. And, everybody knows how to pass the ball around. It's like we're better at Zoom now than we were in 2020. And so I think for me, it works even more so.
It has and I think this is what he did really well with this. And then the other one we were talking about was Unfriended, was another fine example of what you can do with desktop horror, which is a genre I didn't know that I enjoyed. And then I saw that and was like, oh, I kind of dig this. It's kind of fun. It's like an office spook. Like you can just be like, I'm going to have a little spooky moment on my phone or on my desktop for just a minute on my lunch break.
My first exposure to anything in this style, I think, was an episode of Modern Family where they did a Screen Life type episode, and I was like, oh, that's novel. And then there was a wave of horror movies that came out that used that style.
I enjoyed how he took some of the Zoom elements that playing with the background, the animated background with the one character who just keeps, that was so well done, and it never got old. It never got, it wasn't
Caroline,
creepy, but it kind of edged right in there. And then once you see what has really happened to that character, it gets even more powerful.
The thing that stuck the landing, I think, on that was that last moment when all the girls are, spoiler alert, everybody, by the way, it's horrible stuff happens.
I've got a banner just for that. So there we go. Please.
Yeah.
Spoil away.
Okay. I'll wait. I think they're gone. Okay, cool. Guys, do you guys remember that point where at the end where everyone's dying and it's clicking their screens off and it's their profile pictures? I thought that was that's when I was like, oh, this is a stylistic choice to do it on this. And I love when you play.
It's well edited. It's really a really well edited movie. I like how the choices they make.
We see the timer ticking down, right?
Yeah. I had it in my notes. So I wanted to bring that up. So time pressure. Anyway, There's it's a free Zoom, which I thought was an awesome take. Is that it was like, they didn't buy Zoom. None of us did, right? And so you only have an hour to have your conversation, and that timer ticking down. So time pressure is like when it's, why do fun things go by quickly and long days last forever, right? And it's because we are aware of time when we are in situations that we don't want to be in, or bad things, because we want it to be over. So it makes it seem like time lasts longer. And that's like time pressure is the concept, right? And I love that in the midst of this movie with all this stuff going on, there was always a ticker going on. I'm like, oh yeah, no wonder I have so much anxiety right now, because subconsciously I keep going, guys, we only have 30 minutes left of this movie. How are we going to get out of this? And I loved it. Loved it.
It's the Hitchcock bomb under the chair. You you have like this finite amount of time.
So this movie, I was looking, I mean, like, it still has a 99% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, nobody doesn't like this movie. So does anybody have any quibbles with this movie? I mean, can we help knock that down just a peg? I mean, I hate to think that there's a 99% out there.
Well, there were several moments that were intended to be creepy that I could just not force myself to be creeped out by. Like early on, a door's open seemingly by itself, and I could just hear Bill Murray's voice in my head saying, "You're right. No human being would open a door like this." And there were several moments like that. No human being could drop an ironing board like that.
Right.
Oh, for me, it was for me, the biggest buy-in for the movie is just the style, because I guess I'm like an old man about screen life style movies and found footage, that part of me is like, I have to be dragged into it a little bit, but once I buy into it, I'm on board for the most part. I like a lot of those Paranormal Activity movies, and they're fun when you really just, if you can buy into the style that they're made in, and that's the biggest hurdle for me. But other than that, I think it's a very likable movie. I love all the characters, which you can't say about every horror movie. They're all very, they're all very funny and likable and vulnerable in ways that you empathize with all of them.
It occurs to me that we're like 13 minutes in, and I've yet to talk about like what this actually is. So the briefest synopsis is that it's a Zoom call during pandemic in 2020, during lockdown in England, and they decide to, instead of watching a movie on Netflix, they decide they're going to have a séance over Zoom.
And they call what you deserve when you pull stuff like that. They call
in a medium, and our host is Haley. She's very excited about this. And then there's her neighbor, Gemma, who is not very excited about it and is the one who ends up kind of messing things up for people, because she doesn't take the séance seriously, but the spirits do. And that's kind of how we dive in. I was reading also, in addition to this 99% Rotten Tomatoes rating, which still kind of blows me away, although the audience score is about 71%, and that feels a little more, palatable. But this was rated by the Science of Scare Project, the scariest horror film ever, over things like Texas Chainsaw, over things like, and what they were rating it on is people's heart rate and like how they reacted to it.
Sure.
And I don't know what the spectrum of people that they were, that were part of the survey, but I thought that was interesting. And it said that it has one of the highest rated jump scares. I think Insidious has the highest rating, but it was things like that where I mean, it's when you talk about modern horror, like, to some people, this is the scariest movie that they've ever seen, because it's something that really resonates for them. They are invested in this Zoom world, and it's easier for them, in fact, to imagine themselves that than in, say, in the woods,
right,
being chased by a machete wielding maniac.
I said the scariest thing for me in this movie was Gemma wearing her mask under her nose.
Pull that up.
To some people, Wizard of Oz is the scariest movie in the world, so that means absolutely nothing. This is nowhere near the scariest movie in the world. And if you want me to say some disparaging things about it, one thing I think right away shows is like they're in this seance for 5 or 6 minutes before they decide nothing's going to happen and I'm going to trash this thing and take it off the rails or do whatever. And I mean, it's just like, couldn't you have taken this serious for like 10 minutes minutes, maybe at least.
I don't know.
But you can't even
Attention
do that.
span.
So,
Yeah, they're like what, college kids, right?
I think they're
Mac?
young adults or whatever. But
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Mac?
Yeah, I think you're really stepping in at any time you want to write an article or when that says like scariest this, scariest that. It's horror is subjective, and horror ages in a way that, like obviously, I love watching the 1930s Universal horror movies. They don't scare me at all, and I love reading about how people would pass out in the theaters watching that movie. But like, I'm fascinated by that. But like, obviously, that's not the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. The Exorcist, I think, is commonly held as the scariest movie ever made. I think if you're really into it, then yeah, it can be. But yeah, the heart rate thing is ridiculous, and that's
then The Fugitive is the scariest movie ever made, because like my heart was going that whole movie.
The whole time that Tommy Lee Jones is talking, your heart rate is just pounding. It's scarier than Insidious. Like I never go along with those things. I think or even ratings. I think ratings set people off too. I think it's a lot of clickbait, is what it is.
Well. And to that point, I mean, I do think this is an effective film, and I have such immense respect for the filmmakers, and the fact that the filmmakers are the people who are sitting at home and creating their own makeup designs. I love the fact that like I got the DVD, and they have the behind the scenes stuff of like a makeup artist would go to a person's apartment, with their mask on and do the makeup. And then they would have like stunt rigging show up at another person's apartment and do that. I was like, that's really, I love, again, like Blair Witch, just learning what it took to make this movie, because it does feel pretty seamless. We're watching stuff that isn't, 100% CGI, that there's a lot of, practical effects that are being pulled off in people's apartment for pennies.
The DIY vibe is there the whole time, right? Even when it's like, all right, so here it's a haunted house movie. So haunted house movies, you're immediately going, all right, what are my gags? What are we gonna do? Is that gonna move? What's the set piece? And I just remember being really impressed with their big set piece moments. But I was like, how are you going to do that on a screen? Is it just going to be like fade to black, whatever? But all the kills, all the like creature moments, all that stuff, I just thought, I was like, wow, way to like take what you got and just concentrate on what makes that scary. I think that's what every horror movie should be. Like, don't shoot too far over what you have.
Yeah. Eric?
Yeah, I think they did a good job with my complaint early on was the fishing line door closing. There were enough of those to lead you into the sense of, that's what this is going to be. So that when, like you say, the set pieces happen, Twat Not Teddy getting set on fire, that was pretty impressive. I thought that was one of the better special effects of the movie.
Yeah, and again, seeing that behind the scenes footage, we're like, holy shit, they actually set that guy on fire.
Yeah, they killed a guy for this movie. You guys know that. This movie's a crime. I also love the cuts, because
in the behind the scenes features, they basically have a meeting with the stunt guy, and they say, well, what can you do? They're like, what you got? And basically it seems like they took every trick in the book and threw it, wine bottle bashes, throw his poles, everything up. I think they just figured out what they could do, which seemed to be they figured out just about everything, and including the fact that they literally lit that guy on fire. His head was on fire at one point in time, and to see it a second time, he jolts when it finally does, and I'm like, holy shit, they did light him on fire, which is outrageous. And the crazy thing is, you can tell how good the stunts are, because Jenny and Teddy, they're more known for stunts than anything, and that kind of shows through at the end, especially spoilers. Jenny in the pool and all that other stuff are like the extreme, and like they pull it off really well. I mean, between that and some green screen stunts, it turns out great. And I mean, like you were saying with the makeup itself, they they didn't go there or do whatever. They went and Zoomed and had the people do their own appliances and all that stuff. And to think of that as a filmmaker, to have an actor have to do all that and be responsible for that, it's incredible. And how it all came together is really a testament of filmmaking. They made this. And even if it is kind of got a bunch of cliche tropes or middle of the road story, this, that, or other, the fact that they made these things during this time is really, really impressive. And it just gives it that extra bump in my eyes, you know. Here you get an extra film merit badge.
Without being in the same room at all. Go ahead, Mac.
No, I was just saying it was heroic at the time. I remember just because that was also when people were rediscovering the drive-in, and that was a big movie at the drive-ins too. And I that was one of the big things that made me want to see it too. Was like, you got to go see Host at the drive-in, and like I wish I had.
So weird. I'm gonna watch the Zoom call.
Yeah, Zoom call at the drive-in. Yeah,
that would have been the name
of my new album, by the way.
I was surprised watching it this time how effective it was too. The part when Caroline gets thrown against her screen, when like you said with the background, and you don't see her for a long time, and then she has that collision with the screen. I knew it was coming, and it still made me jump.
Yeah,
and it's relentless. And then there's that like amazing moment where, I don't remember the woman who's left, but like Caroline's dead, the other one's gone, and the other one's running to the other. As it's just her under the blanket, Emma, hyperventilating while you see that endless like Lovecraftian limbo loop of that woman walking back and forth. And I was like, oh, that's genius. That's really smart, because that's so scary. Because there's a person there, but you can't see what's happening in their world, but you know they're there, and it's just like that endless blip into the nothingness. Deep. I thought that was deep.
I forgot they were British. That's what I felt really embarrassed about.
That's how good the movie is.
The movie got started, and I was like, I don't remember everyone being English.
It's a really impressive movie, and Rob Savage is actually I don't know if it was this film, but I suspect it certainly had a hand in him. He's got the reins of this new Boogeyman adaptation, the Stephen King short story that's been I think it's coming out this fall.
Yeah. No, that's the one that's out now, right?
Was it already out?
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting because you can feel his wings get a little clipped on that one. I mean, it's fun. It's like horror flavored horror, but it's not anywhere near. Yeah, it's like if you want to have it on in the background, beer flavored beer. It tastes like beer because you want a beer. But like Host has something sinister about it. There's a savagery in there, and I kind of dig that. I like that Rob Savage. So Rob, if you're watching, get back in there, bud. Take your money, do something for $20. See, come on, get in there.
Cool. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
The leader of the stand. I thought it's a great calling card for all these people. It seems like they'd come together and made a great project, and this could be a jumping off part for a bunch of them, because there really wasn't a bad actor in the bunch. I mean, maybe Teddy or whatever, but I'd expect
you
more.
You leave Teddy alone.
I think they have a great future ahead of them. He's been annoying really well.
Mac?
That's what it is.
I guess going forward, I'd just say for myself, give horror movies that are made a different way an opportunity, because if you don't, you're missing out on some really innovative things. Open your mind to the new waves of things coming in, new innovations, and that's all I got.
No, that's actually a great comment, because I think a lot of us say, hey, I don't like X. And it's like, you just haven't seen the X that works for you.
Oh, I thought you meant you don't like X, like the Ty West movie. And I was like,
I like X, and I like ecstasy. I like all of that. Anything that's X, I like it. Eric?
Except for Twitter.
Well, yeah, that's true. We don't need that.
Which isn't really, it's Twitter.
It's still Twitter.
For what I thought was going to be Paranormal Activity light, it turned out to be pretty impressive. And the more I think about it, the more I really want to rewatch it just to see if I can figure out how it was edited together. Because apparently they filmed it over 12 days, but you would swear they did it in an afternoon.
12 weeks is what I
12 weeks.
read.
Okay.
It came out in July of 2020.
Yeah. I knew there was a 12 in there somewhere.
To piggyback on what Mac was saying, also I want to make note that we had to try to find a reason why we didn't like this movie, which I thought was kind of delightful.
Yeah,
it's been a while since
we
I've
didn't do
no,
very well.
we did not nail it because those are easily refutable. But like, and that's a testament to this movie. Like it is what happens when people like to make the movies, when they like to do the craft, and they get a lot of good people together that also want to do the craft, and they get clever, which I think is something that is missing in a lot of things. Not to be like, these kids today, but I'm like, there's a clever is always appreciated when you do these kinds of things. Be smart. And I think that this is one of those movies that I want to have on the pedestal of like, hey man, Godzilla came out of the atomic age, X and X amount, right? This literally came out of an actual thing that was happening. So like as a little time capsule, it's also lovely. But it also works outside of that, and that makes it classic. So who would have thunk that movie was one of those like, oh man, no, top 5, maybe the last 30 years. Love it. Great. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. Again, this is Scare-A-Thon 2023, and we are raising funds and awareness for the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. The link to donate is below in the description. It's a very important issue for myself and my guests. So please give generously. And we look forward to having you all back on here very soon. Until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.